This week, you've been learning about the interdisciplinary research process, or IRP. Recall that we use this process to help us make decisions about the problems or questions we study. It's an iterative process in that we should expect to revisit earlier steps and revise our decisions. One of its many advantages is that it was created using an interdisciplinary approach, and it reflects the many different research processes used across the disciplines. The IRP has 10 basic steps. The first step is to define the problem or state the research question. This first step can be further divided into 4 decisions we need to make. Making sure that we select a problem that is suitable to interdisciplinary study, define the scope of the problem, make sure we avoid 3 common tendencies that run counter to the entire process, and make sure we follow 3 guidelines. We start step 1 by selecting a problem we want to learn more about, or by posing a research question that we've developed. Maybe we've read about a topic but still have some burning questions. Or maybe we've identified some ways in which 2 different disciplines disagree about how to solve a problem. Some people find it useful to draw maps of the topics they study and draw connections between concepts, ideas, theories, assumptions, and so on. We will learn more about map-making strategies later in the semester. The problems we select or the questions we pose should have 2 features. 1, they should be complex enough that multiple disciplines are necessary to understand them. A useful initial test is to ask whether there is more than one way to look at the problem or the question, and if so, which disciplines might be interested. 2, the problems or questions should be researchable in an interdisciplinary sense. This second point means we would be able to find research about the problem or question in more than one discipline. Authors from at least 2 disciplines have published literature related to some aspect of the problem or question. To find this research, we conduct a brief literature review using the university's library databases or Google Scholar. Many of you in this class are combining psychology and sociology, or one of these with another discipline. If you can't find a single article in the psychology journals about a sociology-related problem, that problem may not be complex enough for an interdisciplinary approach. It could be a topic that is mostly studied by sociologists or some other discipline, but not psychologists. It's important to take the time early in the process in step 1 to do a quick search because it can save you a lot of time later on down the road. You don't want to get halfway through this research process and realize that the problem or question is only relevant to one of your disciplines. The second decision involved in step 1 involves how we define the scope of the problem or question. The word scope includes all of what you intend to include in your investigation and what you plan to exclude. For example, we could examine the causes of a phenomenon, the factors that contribute to its existence. We could also examine the effects, outcomes, consequences of the phenomenon. We could focus on preventing the phenomenon or certain aspects of it, or we could evaluate an existing treatment, technique, tool, or training program in its attempt to address the phenomenon. By narrowing the scope of our research, we can stay focused in subsequent steps, especially during the literature search. When we make this decision, we want to avoid the 2 extremes. We don't want to define the scope too broadly. The research process will likely be unmanageable. We also want to avoid defining the scope too narrowly, to the point where interdisciplinary studies are not necessary to understand the problem or to answer the question. In college, your professors will help you identify topics that are not too broad and not too narrow. With experience, interdisciplinarians learn what constitutes a manageable research project. One of the other things that we should keep in mind about this decision is that we may need to revisit it as we proceed with the IRP. If, after conducting the literature search, we could not identify enough information in multiple disciplines, or we found too much information to tackle in one project, we may need to modify the original scope of the project in some way. If it's too broad, we narrow it. If it's too narrow, we broaden it. As we make these decisions, we need to avoid 3 common tendencies that will derail the IRP. The first one is disciplinary bias. This refers to stating the problem using words and phrases that connect it to a particular discipline. When someone reads our work, they should not perceive that one discipline is favored over the others. It should be clear in the title, the introduction, throughout the body of work, and even the references list, that multiple disciplines have been incorporated, and that there is somewhat of a balance between them. The second tendency is disciplinary jargon, or using technical terms and concepts that are not generally understood outside a particular discipline. Words like cognitive dissonance and correlation coefficients are very technical. Most people would not know what these words mean without looking them up in a dictionary. A good rule of thumb is to assume that the reader, the audience, is unfamiliar with a technical term or concept. In this way, your audience is both disciplines and the general public. The third tendency to avoid is personal bias, or the act of injecting one's own point of view when introducing the problem or question. Our work should not reflect our beliefs, our experiences, our opinions. Our work should reflect an integration of the insights derived from our disciplines. Our limited personal experiences will not be enough to develop a comprehensive understanding of a complex problem or question. Avoiding these 3 tendencies helps us identify relevant phenomena and properly define the scope of our investigation. In addition to avoiding these tendencies, we also need to follow these 3 guidelines. First, make sure the problem or question is stated clearly and concisely. Make sure your audience knows it's an interdisciplinary effort, and make sure they know what topics are going to be explored. Second, as we just learned, we want to make sure the problem is sufficiently narrow to be manageable within the limits of the project, of the situation, of the organization, of the budget. Again, you may have to come back to step 1 after you've made it halfway through the process. Third, make sure the problem has context. Explain why it's important to your audience, why they should care about your work. Your textbook provides some examples of interdisciplinary problems and research questions. Examples of paragraphs that define the problem or question and its scope. You can refer to these examples as you work through this course and your Integrative Studies 499 course. I and your other instructors will provide feedback in these courses to help you learn what it means to identify a topic that is quote-unquote sufficiently narrow. Compared to disciplinary research, the IRP is more creative. It requires out-of-the-box thinking. In order to channel your creativity, you may find it helpful to read about topics of interest and jot down some of the ideas that spontaneously come to your mind. What is the real problem? Which disciplines might be interested in this problem? What theories may be able to explain all or parts of this problem? Are there conflicts in how disciplines might explain this problem? Why hasn't anyone solved this problem already? What are some barriers to solving the problem? Identifying a good question means finding one that is both complex and researchable, as well as one that isn't too narrow or too broad. Beginners, like undergraduate students, may want to start with relatively narrow problems or questions, even though the scope for creativity is much lower. Experts, like graduate students and their professors, will likely focus on problems or questions that are more broad, that allow or even require more creativity. Depending on your level of expertise and the phenomenon of interest, you may want to favor manageability or creativity. The second step of the interdisciplinary research process, or the IRP, is to justify the use of an interdisciplinary approach. Although the experts sometimes skip this step in their publications, beginners like undergraduate students should explicitly make a case for an interdisciplinary approach. In this course and in INTG 499, you'll want to explain how the problem or question you are studying meets the 4 requirements covered in this lecture under Step 2. These requirements are supported by the national academies, which means they are relevant to a wide variety of disciplines, not just psychology and sociology. The first requirement is that the problem is complex. It has multiple parts, and multiple disciplines have made contributions to understanding it. Some examples of questions that could help you brainstorm ideas include: what does it mean to be free, to be fair, to be happy, to be loved? How does social media impact everyday life, the workplace, the pursuit of justice, a change in social norms? How could we eliminate hunger, homelessness, human trafficking? What are the most effective ways of deterring undesirable behavior in groups? In the subsequent steps, you will confirm the complexity of the topic when you map the problem in Step 3 and when you conduct a more comprehensive literature search in Step 4. If you later find that the original problem or question is not complex enough, you would return to Step 1 and modify the decisions you made. Then you would proceed with Steps 2, 3, 4, and so on. Remember, this revisiting of earlier steps and modifying decisions is expected. It is part of the process. Even the experts have to do this when they try to understand a problem or question. It does not necessarily mean the interdisciplinarian is incompetent. In fact, I would say they're being careful and using their resources efficiently. The second requirement is to confirm that 2 or more disciplines have already published important insights regarding the problem or question. A quick literature search on Google Scholar will help us make this decision and meet this requirement. If we can find at least 2 sources, each one from a different discipline, that attempt to explain the same problem, there is potential for an interdisciplinary approach. If we have trouble finding, for example, psychology articles or sociology articles, then our problem may not be relevant to interdisciplinary studies. As an undergraduate student, feel free to reach out to me or your other integrative studies professors for help if you have questions about this requirement. Controversial topics or topics with a long history are often researchable due to their relevance to the general public. There is plenty of information out there, but sorting through it can take time and patience. New trends or recent events may not be as researchable because the important insights we're looking for have yet to be published. The third requirement is to determine that no single discipline can fully explain or resolve the problem. Although this rarely happens, if psychology can explain the causes and effects of a problem and has developed effective treatment and prevention plans, then the problem may not need an interdisciplinary approach. Again, this rarely happens. In many situations, a single discipline cannot fully explain a complex problem. For example, the problem of school shootings has been addressed by sociology, psychology, criminal justice, anthropology, psychiatry, education, political science, and so on. But no single discipline has been able to fully explain the problem within its disciplinary boundaries. Why? Because the problem is just too complex for one discipline. The problem of school shootings then requires an interdisciplinary approach in order to gain a comprehensive understanding of its causes, its effects, how to prevent it, and how to treat perpetrators and victims, as well as the community. The fourth and final requirement to be considered in step 2 is to determine that the problem is an unresolved societal need or issue. We call this problem-based research. It focuses on problems that still need to be addressed. This is one of the reasons why interdisciplinarians need to be familiar with the disciplines that contribute insights to the topics they study. As they identify insights, they also tend to identify gaps, which further informs the problems they select and the scope of their research. Interdisciplinary studies tends to be problem-focused, and problem-focused research tends to be interdisciplinary in nature. The two are not interchangeable, but they tend to occur together. Interdisciplinarians try to address problems or questions from multiple angles, and problem-focused research requires a multi-angle approach. Again, because the problems are so complex. The problems cannot be resolved through one discipline. Once we've completed steps 1 and 2 and are satisfied with our decisions, we can move forward to step 3, which we will cover next week.